Test blind is basically the UCs and a few other schools. Students may not submit test scores when applying for admission. Basically, it's 80 schools total, but it was really implemented by the UCs and the CSUs. It's implemented to improve diversity. The idea being that students, which are basically Hispanic students and Black students, they want to get more of them in, and because the SAT scores they say are hurting the students because they don't do as well, that we're not going to take tests at all, take the scores at all. It was replaced by non-academic criteria. It was replaced by, so instead of the scores now, where they're going to definitely look at your grades. The grades are basically all important here in terms of the academic model, but they're also going to use weighted socioeconomic factors, basically a big AI bot, going to take all of your socioeconomic factors and all the things they have on you, and they're going to put it in a big system. And they're also going to use proximity to the school. So in other words, if you live closer to a school, that's also going to be a factor in your favor in terms of getting into the UCs or CSUs. They're just going to have a big AI bot take all of these students and just submit your GPAs, and we're going to figure out where you go. Okay, and that's how it works with the CSUs and UCs right now. Okay, now, I don't mind inviting a little bit of discussion about this in a minute, but a caveat here, I'm going to give you my opinion on this, and this is just my opinion. It's not the opinion of any other individual, company, or institution, but it is just my opinion on here on what's happening. And so let's talk about actually the consequences of test blind. The UC task force, they had a task force in 2019. The university UC system decided to put a task force together to really study the impact of standardized test scores on college admissions. And they had put a big task force together. They put out this big 220-page report. I actually put the link down here if you want to look at this. If you ever want to geek out on SAT stuff, and it is the most comprehensive report you're going to find on just everything, all the impacts and what impacts more and so on. And it can get a little thick, but if you really ever want to geek out on it, that's the way to go. But they found that the test scores are a good predictor of college success, despite the student background. It doesn't matter where the student came from. Those scores are still a good predictor, actually a better predictor than GPA. I'll say that again. The scores are a good predictor of college readiness and a better predictor than GPA. Basically, the way they come up with it is GPA are a good predictor, scores are a better predictor, and GPA and scores together are the best predictor. Okay? So, and they found that other factors contribute more to a lack of diversity. Schools not getting a lot of students can't get in college, more so because of the AG requirements. You have to have a certain amount of AG courses. Sure, all the high school students know about this. But you need a certain amount of AG courses to get in. And at the schools at the more disadvantaged schools, it's really difficult to get those courses that you need. Especially in the arts programs and things like that. So a lot of students from those end up going to community colleges first just to get those AG requirements, even if they might have the numbers. And they found that is really the bigger barrier than scores. And if there are scores that are problems, the college admissions officers can always mitigate there because they know what's going on with the different schools, and they know. So they have the context, so they can smooth out the rough edges on that if they exist. This is what the UC task force found. They wholeheartedly endorsed these tests to the point where the UC Academic Senate, which under sort of the bylaws of the UC regions has the authority to determine admission standards, and they voted 51-0 to keep the scores. Okay. And they also voted to reject test optional for all the reasons we just talked about in terms of sort of, it just opens up this back door to a lot of sort of funny stuff. So they actually voted 51-0, I mean, not one dissent, to keep the scores. So the report comes out, and a month later, the UC Regent says, thanks very much for the report. Academic Senate, thank you very much. We're getting rid of them anyway. And so basically what you had was a group of 25 appointed, non-elected people making this decision for the entire UC system. And then the CSU Board of Trustees, another about 25 people, decided 2 years later to follow UC under, without any real justification for it, to follow along in the UC's footsteps. So basically you have about 50 people making this decision for unelected people making this decision despite the clear view of its own academic senate to get rid of these tests for a college system that has nearly 750,000 students in it. So you need to know what's going on with this stuff, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Now we will get to all the nuts and bolts of the ACT, SAT stuff in a minute, but I do want to alert people to what is going on here, because you're not going to find this sort of in the mainstream media. Okay, you're not going to find this at U.S. News and World Report or Bloomberg or wherever about what actually is going on with these tests. And it really is, in my view, it's not a good idea. It's not a good thing that's happening right now. And yes, I know I'm an SAT tutor and I get a vested interest in keeping these tests in place, but really, even if I wasn't, this is really not a good idea academically for students. And let's talk about why. All right, first of all, it creates this complete admissions lottery here. Basically, you don't know where you're going to go. You're going to put in your applications everywhere, and the AI bot is going to determine where you want to go, and so on and so forth. So you really don't have a lot of control. You certainly don't have a lot of choice or certainty. You're just basically wherever it decides I'm going to get in, I'm going to get in. It really it increases applications. That is the one thing they have seen, the big impact they've seen so far, is that the applications have increased tremendously. So all of a sudden, there's so many more applications and so many more students trying to get in. And the competition, the amount, and so if you're a good student with good scores and good grades, it's much, much harder for you to get in now. Because you've just got so much competition from students that really aren't maybe at your level, but are being let in anyway. And it's not about, and I don't want to, this is about academic integrity. This is about your qualifications just in terms of your own academic performance. This isn't about any other sort of demographic issues. It's just about, in terms of academic quality of students, it really is diluting that academic quality of the students. So if you're going to a school and you want to think about this is, if you're thinking, I'm going to this great school, and all of a sudden, now it's test blind, so now you're in a school where maybe the students maybe aren't as, up to the same snuff that they used to be, and there's more sort of, differences between the speed that students learn and sort of the pacing that needs to be. It's gonna drag courses down. It's gonna drag the sort of speed that you get through these courses. It's gonna make a difference, because what you're doing is you're throwing a bunch of people in. Some of them are more ready than others. If you have a student who's just always switched on, always been getting great grades and got great scores, and they're going, and then you have a student who sort of just got in because sort of the grades were good, and the AI bot determined that she lives close and so on, and she's struggling through to keep up. It doesn't hurt. It hurts both sides. And what you end up seeing is and this is my own opinion, you're going to end up seeing more dropouts. You're going to see more people that are just going to get frustrated that they can't keep up, and they're going to fall by the wayside. And that's exactly what you don't want to happen. It's great that we put these students in there, but if they can't keep up and they fall out, then what good have you done? You just saddled them with debt, and usually saddled them with school debt, and they're not in the system anymore. So it really doesn't, in my view, it doesn't really help, and it's really going to create a lot more problems than it's worth. It also misses diamonds in the rough, and this is specifically, one of the main things the tests were designed for originally, and that was to find students in schools, that maybe weren't doing so well. You know, it's not real easy for all students to have 4 years of just straight up, I'm a good student for 4 years, nothing's happening, nothing's going on in my life. I really like my school, and here I got great grades, and now I can go. There are a lot of students for whom personal issues, illnesses, a lot of things outside of the student's control may mean that 4 years plan during high school doesn't go smoothly for them. So the tests were specifically designed when they sort of redid them all in the 50s. Were specifically designed to find diamonds in the rough, to find students from underprivileged backgrounds who maybe weren't succeeding at their high schools at all, but who had aptitude, who had skills, and with the right training or the right development, you could find those students and bring them along. And that is really one of the main things the test was designed to do in the first place. Now, you're just letting them go, and you won't find them. And there's no way to find them anymore if you're not using those tests. And finally, homogenized college reputations. You want to think about it as a student. Okay, so great. I got into Cal. Great, awesome. I'm going to great school. Well, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, your alma mater, is really important throughout your entire career in terms of your contacts, in terms of your salary for a lot of jobs and so on. It really affects all throughout your life, your earning potential and so on. You may be getting into a school with a great reputation now, but if all of these things become so homogenized, then all of a sudden that reputation at school may not be the same in 10 years. Does that make sense? Okay, and so you really want to think about it. You really want to think about what's going on with these. Okay, and it also, other things, it impacts special programs the most. If the CSUs, especially on this, they did a report at the end. They sort of a chart on sort of schools that are impacted by the move. And some of the schools, about half of them, are completely impacted. Every single program is impacted. And if you look at those charts, it's the schools with the special programs that are most impacted, like design schools or veterinary schools or any other things with specialized programs are impacted the most. So let's say, and it's not just for the CSUs, but also for the UCs. Let's say you want to go to UC Davis Veterinary School. I had a student who had great scores. She had, over 1,500 SATs. She went to UC Davis because she really wanted to go to the veterinary school. Well, at that time, it was easy for her to get in. She got in, it was great. Now it's sort of like, well, where do you live? It's not what you're interested in. It's sort of where you live and sort of what your economic background is and everything. Then we'll decide whether you get to go to this school. So it really is, special programs. It's other things, other consequences. It's going to exacerbate high school grade inflation. If grades are the all-important thing, it's really going to be difficult for teachers to sort of give lower grades because they know you may be, keeping this student from going to college. So everybody's going to want to do more grade inflation. And it really does paper over high school disparities. This isn't about the test, okay? This isn't about, the test is not the reason students are not prepared for college. It's the disparities in education and learning environments in these high schools. But if we don't have tests to point them out, then it's a lot easier to sort of paper over that and say, we had 5 students get into a UC, so we must be doing okay. Whereas they wouldn't have before, and people would ask questions. Now they're not asking questions because the tests aren't showing the reasons why. So, and also, really important, you really come into question the community college role here. What they're basically doing, in my view, is turning the entire California public college system into a giant community college. It's not about, it's a community college. You pretty much get in, usually go closer to where you are. But then what's the point of the community colleges? But there is another thing, I'll give you an example. College Marin had a program before this all happened. And they still have the program, but now it's different. But where maybe you didn't get into, and this was with Berkeley especially, they had a really good sort of pipeline here. You could get into, if you didn't get into Berkeley, you could go to College Marin for 2 years And 35% of the students who applied to Berkeley after those 2 years would get in from College of Marin. 35%. So it's a really good pipeline if you go to community college and get what you need in terms of your skills, and then go and finish off at a good 4-year school. And that it really was a really good pipeline, and it's a shame now because now they're sort of, it's not really working the same way, and who knows really how it's going to work going. And it's a real, you don't know what's going on. It's a giant big black box, AI box. It's just going to tell you what's going on, tell you where you go to school, and it really returns to the bad old days before testing standards. There's a reason these tests were made. I mean, with all the bad publicity that these tests get, there's a real reason for these, and that is to hold the schools accountable. In the old analogy of a smoke-filled room, it's good for politics, but it's also really good for college admissions. So they're replacing the smoke-filled room where they all kind of wheedle and decide who's going to go where. Now it's just a big AI bot discerning, what you're going to do. So, for all of these reasons, it's not a good idea. And if you are thinking about the UC system or the CSUs, you really want to think about what the consequences of going test blind are. Because in my opinion, they have no academic credibility here, or no academic support for this. I mean, quite the opposite. All the studies show that the tests actually do work and are better predictors for admissions. So, you really want to think about, sort of in the future, if you're thinking about these schools, whether or not in the current environment, whether it makes sense.
Do you know, and this is just a rumor, and this is just to kind of help other people too, so my son went through the process last year, he's actually out of UC right now, but do you only, no matter how many you apply to, do you only get into one? Is that the way, back to your kind of point about this community college type of thing?
Yeah, no, I don't want to give that impression. I don't know that for a fact, but who knows really what they're going to do, and especially with everything so, there's so many more applications going on right now, that I'm sure they are limiting the number of offers they give. So, like I said, it's going to limit your choice much more.
Well, and this is only my experience of this last year, just from friends. That's that's largely what they saw. Coming out of TAM, a lot of the students that apply to UCs, I only know of one that got into two.
Okay.
And they were being told, oh, send. Just like you said, send. Go, it's what's the harm? Send it out to everywhere, which is sad because there were a lot of kids that had a specific one they wanted to go to, or for specific reasons, and I feel like it diluted the whole. Just so everybody kind of knows, it diluted the whole process. And from
I'm sorry, what did you say?
They were.
What
She had just said, and out of my experience, just all of my son's friends, did a lot of them end up in the closest,
right?
That's closest to the home.
Yeah.
Yes, that did end up happening.
So you want to go to UC Santa Barbara. Do you live close by? No. It's going to be an issue.
There was no answer for that.
Just in general, just my own personal opinion here. If it were me, both test optional, test blind, test required, I'd be looking at test required at schools. One, it's easier to get into, right? The average SAT score is going to be less for them, even though their reputation is actually going to be better because they don't have these little sneaky back doors. Test optional, right? So if it were me, if you're looking long term for the reputation of your school, to me it seems that test required is the way to go for a lot of reasons. Scholarships, the whole thing.